Good morning. Good morning. We should be live on YouTube and Facebook and locals. Just need to confirm that before I relax. I'm Jeffrey Rickman, by the way. If you haven't watched one of these before, I'm a Global Methodist elder. I'm commenting on convening conference legislation. Today should be interesting. We're talking about the most powerful people in the GMC. So that's people serving on the Connectional Council and the Chief Connectional Officer. So let's see. We got some people with us this morning. We got George from Tennessee. Hey, George. And Tim from South Dakota. And Gabe from Tennessee. And Pat. Good morning. Good morning. Could one of you gentlemen, it's all gentlemen so far on locals, confirm that I'm streaming? I did a different thing this morning for getting on the internet. So, hey, Jen, good to see you, sister. I'm, I've been hosting a morning worship service online, and today went terribly. Everything went wrong that could have gone wrong, but I still had good friends that were just along for the ride, and even though they couldn't hear half of it, they're just sitting there feeling sorry for me. So, anyway, I need to make sure that this is going out because I haven't heard anything from, and Kathy D. Oh, yep, I need to change this stream here. One day I'll get really good at this, y'all. Okay. Oh, and it got Kathy's comment. Hey, Kathy, good to see you. Good morning. Well, thank you, D. And the fact that you said that makes me aware that I am on locals, so I'm going to relax now. Very good. All right, let's, what did I want to say before things began this morning? I wanted to say I need to ask your prayers. I got a piece of information yesterday that is quite upsetting about GMC leadership. And it's nothing about any of the people I'm friends with. And Keith Boyette, even though I disagree with him, he's a fantastic guy, very capable. I don't want to make any allegations at this point, but the thing I learned yesterday very much impacts the viability of the bishop's plan, and I'm trying to figure out how to be responsible with giving this information. And so I need prayers. I need to have a number of conversations today. I don't want to do damage, but it's also just very clear to me that I can't just sit on this information and do nothing. So it's going to be a hard couple of days, and then I might film something at the end of the week. So just as a general reminder, I know I say things that offend a lot of people sometimes, and good intentions pave the road to hell, right? So just because I have good intentions doesn't mean that everything I say is right or in the right spirit. But the reason I'm doing this project, the reason I say the things I do is because I think that lies and lies by omission cause a great deal of harm. And I like very much the project of the Global Methodist Church, and I think that there are a number of people in charge who may not have bad intentions, but they're not being responsible with the authority given them. They're not being sober about the real threats before us and the real diligence that's required at this point. And so I've been a corrective on that, and there are a lot of people who don't think I should have been. I'm just some pastor out in a very small town. I was not elected to this position. So it is what it is, and I feel bad about anything I've said or done that caused more harm than help. But the intent behind this is to help. The intent behind this petition series is to help. One of the huge problems in the United Methodist Church was when the General Conference came up, the vast majority of people had no idea what was coming, had no framework for understanding it, and so I've obviously seen it as my mission to help people understand it, for better or for worse. I think it's always good to understand things. I think knowledge is not just power, but it's comfort. And so my hope is that as we spend time on this, and today, today's episode is mostly, and we're looking at the Chief Connectional Officer. I think that's the title, and then the Connectional Commission, the CCC. No, I think anyway, we'll cover it. But anyway, the hope is that as we cover this stuff, that you feel like you know what's coming before the convening conference, and you know how to pray for the people that are dealing with this stuff. All right. Oh, you guys are good to me. All right. Got a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm not going to highlight your stuff. God bless you. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. They have gone worldwide, and I hope to be of more help. Here's the other thing I wanted to say this morning is I hope, there are people, good morning, Tom, who want to impugn my motives. But here's the thing, like, as I'm doing this petition series, each of these is only getting like 200 to 300 views. Not a lot of engagement. Zambia just left the United Methodist Church. The African bishops over there just made a united statement in favor of regionalization that tries to stack the deck in favor of regionalization. The United Methodist bishops just made a collective statement that they're going to host this big thing in 2026 with unelected people. They're just going to spend millions of dollars on this big gathering that nobody asked them to do. There are a number of things that I could be talking about right now. Jonesboro lost their case. I've been asked to follow up on a number of things. Nigeria, the GMC just won a huge legal victory over the United Methodist Church. The United Methodist Church is not a legal entity there anymore. These are things that I could be doing segments on that would make me money, and I'm choosing instead to spend all of my time and energy preparing for the convening conference because that is what's important. I want to build up. I want this to go well. I want the GMC to be in a good position to do the work that needs to get done. And so that's why I'm going to continue to talk about things that a lot of people would rather I didn't. There are a lot of people real happy with me whenever I was poking holes in the UMC, but they are not happy with me for noting, hey, GMC is potentially making some really bad decisions. So I'm going to require some patience from people. Clayton says, I think your motives are clear, highlighting what's happening. Yeah, I think that does come through to people. And so very few people, I think, actually question my motivations. I think they just question whether or not my way about going about these things is the right way. And that's about to happen in a big way. Anyway, we should get started on today's topic. Have you looked up the Harvest Church lawsuit here in Alabama? I haven't. I have no idea where that case is right now. So that's another one of the things, if there's been developments on, that I would be reporting on. 200 to 300 views of the video is decent, and if those people tell their churches, it multiplies the message. Yeah, it's just not the level of engagement that I could get with if I do that other stuff. I'd be getting 2,000 to 4,000 views per segment, and that adds up. So anyway, on this thing of 200 to 300 views, just to make sure y'all know, this is not to be petty, but it's just when dissemination of information is the important thing. The Episcopal candidates decided not to do interviews with me and to instead go with Diane Burnett and Andy Miller. And you can't see the metrics of how many people watch the Diane Burnett interviews because it's on Vimeo and that doesn't let you see that stuff. I suspect it's quite low. Why do I suspect that? Because Andy Miller has a much bigger platform than Diane Burnett does. And I've been looking at the Episcopal interviews he's done, and it's only a couple hundred views, maybe 300. I didn't look yesterday. Maybe they're higher. But if I had been given those interviews, I'm certain they would be at least 1,000. I'm certain that people would know the Episcopal candidates better now than they currently do. So I think it's a lost opportunity on their end. And to be clear, Diane Burnett, that was not her decision. I never even asked her. I'm not blaming her for that. I'm blaming the Episcopal candidates directly for circling the wagons and refusing to be scrutinized in the way that they knew that I would. So, and that's not to say I hate them. I like a lot of them, but I think that was a really poor decision. George says, I want to know what's going on with the GMC because I don't want to join another church that is going to go down the same path as the UMC. That's where we all are. Absolutely. Jen says, I've been trying to watch the Andy Miller interviews. Andy's my friend. But they're boring. Same questions each, no real information. And I usually like Andy's podcast. Yeah, okay, so they wanted this controlled. They wanted it, they knew I wouldn't do it that way. I would have just started off one way and we would have gone in a completely different direction, and I would have covered completely different materials. Actually, there is one Episcopal candidate. Actually, there are 3 that have said that they are interested. And so I think I am going to do those this week. I might have one tomorrow. But it needs to happen. They need to be scrutinized. So, Pat, things to know about Andy Miller. He came out of the Salvation Army. He's a true believer. He is more institutionally minded because he's affiliated with an institution, Wesley Biblical Seminary. But he still has a concern for genuine Wesleyan theology. But I think he's trying to position himself in a certain way with respect to the institution that I'm not. Like if you were the head of a seminary, you would want to have a good relationship with the GMC. So he does come off as squeaky clean, and I think he genuinely is. I think he's deeply sanctified. He's a lovely man, even though I disagree with him going through the chief communications officer to access people he wants to talk to. And he's talked about that publicly. I've talked about that publicly. We can disagree with each other and still love each other. Yeah, that's absolutely right, D. I didn't get to watch that conversation. I'm glad it was a good conversation. Good morning, Matt. Good to see you, brother. And George, in my humble opinion, if there's some people that are upset, you're doing your job. Yeah, I didn't sign up to, that's not my primary goal to make people upset, but it's obviously going to happen. All right, let's pray. Today is September 10th, I believe. Yeah, Tuesday, September 10th. The Lord be with you. Let's pray. We pray for the families of all delegates to be shepherded by God during the time of separation. God, give them quietness and peace. As they are apart, may they be restored in Him. May they fear no evil, always comforted by you. Provide for all their needs, especially anoint them with your oil, the oil of your Spirit, so that they may have an overflow of abundance. In Jesus' name, let goodness and love abound. Amen. It is hard for families to be without, and that's why I didn't even try and go. I wasn't nominated. Well, they didn't let people get nominated. You had to nominate yourself. But even if I'd nominated, I didn't want to go even as plain spoken capacity. I got 5 young kids at home. I got a wife. Anyway, I'm really happy to have technology and so many friends who are going to be over there. For those who don't know, I'm planning on hosting watch parties. I started reaching out yesterday to a lot of local clergy to see if they would come into the studio with me and watch the proceedings with me and comment and explain. Of course, I was denied by General Conference leadership to restream what they do, but we can still watch and then comment on what we see. And so hopefully a lot of people can watch the proceedings and watch us at the same time. If they have the same bandwidth and a half-decent computer, they should be able to watch 2 things at the same time. And hopefully I'll have some really great guests on to talk about proceedings and reflect on it. Anyway, it's time for us to get into today's petitions. Let me see if any of the comments need addressing. Hey, Ben. Duncan says, I do not blame the Episcopal candidates. I blame a system of internal pressure where people who want in are expected to not rock the boat for insiders at the cost of open discourse between leaders and those they represent. I have enough, what's the right emotion, feeling? I have enough blame to go around. I think there's the system, and then there's the people who enable the system. And this ties to the larger thing I'm about to start reporting on in the next couple of days that's going to rock the boat pretty hard. I did my Bitter Medicine series that largely condemned conservatives for what happened in the United Methodist Church because they were conflict avoidant. Generally speaking, there were exceptions. They were conflict avoidant, they were siloed and selfish, and they stuck their heads in the sand. And when there's a culture that is unhealthy, it is either enabled or combated by people. And what happened in the UMC was not enough people did combat, not enough people pushed back. And that's what we need our leadership to do and be. If we're going to consider strong leadership, the superintendent's bishop's role is going to be so powerful. We're going to have people in that role who don't have it in them to stand against the tide. That don't make sense to me. I think we need to be filtering for people who have the ability to stand on conscience even whenever it goes against the flow. Because if all we have is a bunch of people that are going to toe the party line, I don't see the point of the superintendency. I don't see the point of having bishops. We might as well just be a bunch of elders. And so that's why I'm disappointed in the current batch, and I'm much more so. And you'll see why in a couple days. But I'm going to recommend that we only give a couple bishops to Africa because they need Episcopal leadership, and that we don't have any more in America for 2 years, so that we can get really clear on our theology and culture, and then in 2026 we can choose leadership that fits with that model, rather than choosing the leadership first and then coming up with a model that fits it. Internal pressure is a real thing, that's true. And Duncan says, if you build a rotten boat, it doesn't matter what humans drive, it's going down. And that's true. Tom says, as far as I know, as a delegate, the candidates themselves had nothing to do with the decision to use the communications officer. Not saying that this was the best decision. Well, no, there's no way that these decisions were made by Keith Boyette and the TLC months ago. So this is not a Democratic decision. And to my knowledge, there's nothing. There might be a petition that could be amended. Actually, I think I know. For delegates who are watching this, the petition that I think can be amended to limit the ability of the Chief Connections Officer, I think. I thought I wrote it down, but maybe I didn't. Oh, I think it's petition 102. Yeah, let's look at that real quick, and then we'll get into today's petitions. We're at petition 102. Okay, where are we? So this is the Connectional Commission on Communication. So I don't think there's anything pertaining to the Chief Connectional Officer, but I think this one talks about the commission shall offer resourcing to local churches' annual conferences to include but not be limited to. These are the things that they're supposed to do. Oh, man, and that's it right there. So I think you could maybe put something in here to hamstring the chief communications officer. If not there, I don't know where. But I do think that if delegates are interested in a transparent system. I don't hold anything against Diane Burnett. She's just doing the job she was given as instructed her by unelected people at the top that I mostly agree with and appreciate and respect. But I just think that one approach to communications, bottlenecking through a centralized person, I think that was a mistake. I think that would result in really bad things down the line. So anyway, we need to focus on petitions 93 and what's the other one for today? 93 and 124. So this 124 deals with the Connectional Council, 93 deals with the Connectional Operations Officer. So Mike Schaefer is the new Connectional Operations Officer. He's already been hired. From what I hear, he is a fantastic person for the role. He's well-liked and respected. So there's the person, and then there's the office. And we're going to look at the power endowed to this one person. This is going to go to Connectional Organization Committee. The TLC crafted this legislation. The rationale is this petition establishes the position of the Connectional Operations Officer to replace paragraph 706 dealing with the transitional Connectional Operating Officer. So that person was Keith Boyette. Even though I push back against Keith in some ways, the main sentiment I want to convey towards Keith Boyette is always and ever appreciation and respect for the job that he's done. So the Connectional Operations Officer largely replaces him, although it's my understanding that his job description does not directly overlap what Keith did. Keith really, for all intents and purposes, could have easily been called the emperor of the GMC. He was able to operate unilaterally in ways that I don't think anybody's going to be able to now. I think he's already transitioning out largely, and Reverend Schaefer is transitioning in. Here's what the new language says. Paragraph 703, Connectional Operations Officer. The Connectional Operations Officer shall bear responsibility for the fruitful and accountable functioning of all general church boards, commissions, and councils as they work together to fulfill the General Conference's missional mandates between general conferences. So with respect to selection, the connectional operations officer may be either clergy or a layperson. As necessary, the connectional council will be responsible for revising the job description for the connectional operations officer. So we'll get to the connectional council. They are the replacement for the transitional leadership council. C, the council will be responsible for posting this position as widely as it believes necessary in order to surface a large pool of qualified candidates. D, from the pool of applicants, the council shall select a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6 candidates, forwarding the chosen candidates' applications to the Assembly of Bishops for its consideration. So this is just in the selection process. That's what we're dealing with. E, from among the candidates forwarded to it by the council, the Assembly of Bishops will determine which candidates it wishes to interview. So you have the council, and now you have the Assembly of Bishops. So the GMC doesn't have a council of bishops like the UMC has an Assembly of Bishops. So they can interview candidates. F, the Assembly of Bishops will select its chosen candidate based on a process of its own choosing. So here's another way in which bishops are given huge authority in the church. G, the Assembly of Bishops will inform the council of its chosen candidate. H, the council's chairperson will notify the chosen candidate and present her or him a 6-year contract. So even though the council is selecting the candidates, they send all those candidates to the Assembly of Bishops, who then makes the selection, and then on their behalf, the council's chairperson notifies them. This is an interesting system. I, the council, will be responsible for onboarding the connectional operations officer. I assume it's because the connectional council will be reporting to this person, and if they are selecting the actual person, then they can kind of control that person. And so you need to have a body outside of them that choose. But if they're choosing up to 6 candidates, then they can still just choose whoever they think will do their bidding. I don't see how putting the bishops in charge of this process, if they select these 6, then any of these 6 are people that they're prepared to live with and deal with. I guess I don't see the purpose of punting it to the bishops. 2, the connectional operations officer will serve for a 6-year term, and if approved by the Assembly of Bishops and the council, he or she may serve 1 additional 6-year term. So Mike Schaefer is already in position. He's going to serve at least for 2 years, and then I assume, well, maybe, I don't know. I mean, and will it change with each general conference potentially, or will there be a different time when it shifts? I don't know. We'll see. 3, performance evaluation. The council's chairperson will annually conduct a performance evaluation of the connectional operations officer and prepare a report based on the evaluation. The council may appoint. So the council is up to 24 people. It's not going to be the full council. It's just going to be the council's chairperson performing this performance evaluation. The council may appoint a subcommittee to conduct the evaluation, and it may contract with outside personnel organizations in order to complete it. So it doesn't have to stay just one person. It can be a subcommittee. It can even be an outside group. The report will be delivered to the connectional operations officer and the council. The connectional operations officer will have the right to include a self-evaluation to add to the report. That all sounds fine, and, I'm big on transparency, but this is kind of a personnel level thing, and personnel stuff generally is kept confidential, which I think should be okay. Vacancy of the office. In the event of the connectional officer's resignation, serious illness, approved leave of absence, death, or removal from the office, the council will immediately inform the Assembly of Bishops of the vacancy. B, appoint a qualified individual to serve as the interim connectional operations officer. C, if the office is permanently vacated, the provisions of paragraph 703.1 shall apply, except that the new connectional operations officer will be presented with a contract for the balance of the previous occupant's term. What's 703.1? What paragraph is this amending? Okay, so it's just talking about the selection process we just went through. Okay. Except the new connectional operations officer will be presented with a contract for the balance of the previous occupant's term. Okay. D, if approved by the Assembly of Bishops and the council, he or she may serve a full 6-year term after the completion of the balance of years remaining in the previous occupant's term, and by a 2/3 vote of the Assembly of Bishops and by a 60% plus one vote of the council, one additional 6-year term. That's interesting. They're much more persnickety about that person who steps in halfway than the person who steps in all the way at a regular interval. I also noticed that point B, they can appoint a qualified individual to serve as an interim without the assembly of bishops. That's well, but then it says that the provisions of 703.1 shall apply, which involves the bishops. So maybe that's not saying what I thought it was. Point 5, dismissal from the office. The connectional operations officer is an at-will employee of the GMC. Therefore, the officer may be dismissed by a majority vote of the council for any reason and without warning, as long as the dismissal does not violate applicable laws in the state where the Global Methodist Church is incorporated. In keeping with the Christian principles and ethical standards, the Connectional Council shall work to remedy any deficiencies in performance before moving to dismiss the Connectional Operations Officer. The Council may choose to propose a severance agreement with a monetary component that includes a non-disparagement clause. That all sounds kind of fine. I don't know. For those who are interested, I've presented a petition to the General Conference limiting the salaries of people in all of these positions. I would love it if it was adopted, but I kind of doubt it will be. 6, responsibilities and duties. Here's where it gets real interesting, in my opinion. A, serve as the Chief Operations Officer, bearing responsibility for the accountable functioning of the Council, connectional commissions, that's the equivalent of general boards and agencies in the United Methodist Church, and task forces as they work to fulfill the General Conference's missional mandates between General Conferences. So, just as a reminder, General Conference is only meeting every 6 years. This position is responsible for enacting and overseeing the work of the general church body for those 6 years after each General Conference, making sure that everything lines up with the decisions made at the previous General Conference. B, working with the chairperson and secretary of the Connectional Council, the Connectional Operations Officer will, schedule all council meetings, including locations for in-person meetings. So, even though they are not the chairperson, they'll work with the chairperson to schedule all the Connectional Council meetings. 2, ensure all items necessary for meetings are prepared and delivered to council members at least 1 week prior to meetings. So these are agendas, meetings, reports, proposals requiring the council's action. So this is stuff that Keith Boyd has been doing. And 3, deliver an annual report of the council's work to the Assembly of Bishops. Annually appear before the Assembly of Bishops to provide an overview of the report and be prepared to answer their questions and respond to the requests for guidance in fulfilling the General Conference's vision and mandates for the church. So only report to the bishops annually. I would like to see the language changed to say report regularly as required, as desired, as solicited to the bishop. Surely the bishop should be able to get a report from him or her anytime they want. Be prepared to answer their questions. I wish there was a point 4 or little case IV in here saying, and be generally available to the public as well. I mean, I hope they will be. I've talked with Mike Schaefer. He hopes to be available to me and my audience at some point in the future. Hopefully he'll continue to feel that way. But it would be nice to make clear that this person is expected to be representing themselves to the GMC public at least. So report not just to the bishops, but to report to the people through various means. C, be responsible for hiring all general church executive director level positions as set forth in the Book of Doctrines and Discipline and within the constraints and processes established by the council. So this is a very influential position, hiring the heads of all the general church director level positions. D, serve as supervisor for all executive director level positions as set forth. So hiring and firing oversight of all the most influential leaders throughout the year, throughout those 6-year periods. This is a very This is why I'm so big on transparency. In the UMC, we already couldn't do a good job at this over 4-year periods. Now we're extending it out to 6-year periods where hypothetically they are not beholden to the GMC body at large. I think there needs to be more language in here stipulating regular reporting to the GMC population. E, in consultation with the council, exercise the authority to relieve persons holding executive level positions, so that's hiring, firing, and oversight. F, oversee the hiring, assigning, and retaining of all general church administrative staff, so that's not just the executives, that's all staff. G, regularly convene meetings of the general church executive directors to ensure fulfillment of direction given by the council. So there's calling together the connectional council, but then there will just be meetings of the general church executive directors that they can call meetings between at all times, hypothetically to give a shared sense of mission, which would be great. Something else that another petition I put forward was an Open Meetings Act that I would have apply to this. I don't remember if there's explicit stuff, but any meetings of the general church should be live streamed, minutes made available to people at least afterwards. H, oversee the connectional budget as approved by the General Conference and maintaining of all financial records. So one of the things sent me, and I'm about to find out, we'll review the rest of it, but I want to make sure that I see it. Supposedly in this, there is nothing requiring that they be bonded, which I don't understand everything to do with, but anyone who's responsible for finances on behalf of a corporation is supposed to be bonded, and there are clear financial roles here. So for those in the legislative committee who are reviewing this, you want to at least talk about whether or not you want to mandate that this person be bonded and insured. It was not just bonding, but also there's all kinds of liability insurance that needs to be in place for all leadership, but apparently that is not stipulated here. And this is one of the things that's covered by the United Methodist Church. This is one of those things that just crosses the T's and dots the I's. This here should be the place, I believe, either petition 93 or 124, and we'll look at that in a minute. But that needs to happen. I oversee annual audits of all church assemblies, boards, and commissions. I wish it stipulated that he or she was responsible for doing that with somebody else. If there's only one pair of eyes on these things, that's a problem. J, in consultation with the Connectional Commission on Finance Administration, Pension, and Benefits, and the Executive Director of Finance Administration, prepare the general church budget for deliberation, amendment, and approval. So that would be on a 6-year basis, I think. Otherwise, who is approving it? K, negotiate and or oversee negotiation of contracts for general church services and facilities. That's pretty common sense. L, lead the council and all general church executive directors in a new biannual review and evaluation of the missional effectiveness of the general church's commissions and boards, and propose course corrections as necessary to the relevant areas. This is one of those things that it can easily just become this kind of salutary thing, or it can be really powerful to have regular reviews. So the connectional council is regularly reviewing him or her, and then he or her is regularly reviewing the connectional council and all of the general church agencies, that's not what they're called, to make sure that they're aligning missionally with the work established by the General Conference, which is great. M, in consultation with the council, recommend to the General Conference changes to the Book of Doctrines and Discipline and implementing legislation. So that's what the TLC did this year, and Keith Boyette drafted most of that legislation, and the TLC approved it. So every General Conference, there will be, the bulk of the legislation will almost certainly be from the Connectional Council responding to the needs that they see. But yeah, that's all that needs to be said. N, in consultation with the council, oversee the planning and research to advance the mission of the church. Okay, so there will also be planning and research that they're responsible for. Surely there will be other things that need to be done. This is not a comprehensive list, but this kind of casts a vision for what the Chief Connectional Officer should be doing. My primary concerns have to do with mandating availability to the broader GMC body to regularly report, and then secondarily, the council. If the Assembly of Bishops is only getting an annual report from him or her, that would not be sufficient if they're expected to lead in a connectional capacity. But the other stuff is financial in nature. I want to make sure that they're properly insured and bonded. Otherwise, they could get us in a ton of trouble. So I'm sure Matt Conover has some comments here that I need to read. Yeah, he wrote, and I'll go to the comments above. Paragraph 910, all persons holding trust funds, securities, or monies of any kind belonging to a unit of the GMC, not including a local church, shall be bonded by a reliable company in such good and sufficient sum as the Transitional Leadership Council or its designated agent, that'd be the Connectional Council, or successor may direct. The accounts of such units shall be audited at least annually by a recognized public or certified public accountant. So I think he's citing this because even if it's not stipulated here in paragraph 93, whatever I was just in, it's stipulated in paragraph 910 for all positions, including this person. So that would apply. He says a report to a unit of the GMC containing a financial statement that this Transitional Book of Doctrines and Discipline requires to be audited shall not be approved until the audit is made and the financial statement is shown to be correct. Other parts of that report may be approved pending such audit. So I'll have Matt on tomorrow, the next day, or the next day, and he and I will talk about the implications of this. Jen says what we're all thinking. Thank you. And he says, I love the church, and I know you do, brother. Let's see. I'm thinking he wrote some other stuff above. He says, I have a problem with 1D. Let's see. What was that? All right. That was from the pool of applicants, the council shall select a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6 candidates, forwarding the chosen candidates' applications to the Assembly of Bishops for its consideration. So what does Matt say about that? He says, does the Assembly of Bishops really have the need to approve? Yeah, that was the same thing I was picking up on. The Connectional Council does not report to the chief COO, Chief Operations Officer. I think you might be talking about the Chief Connectional Officer. They only report to the General Conference. Okay, so he reviews them and their performance and tries to coordinate them. Even so, he doesn't have hiring and firing ability over them. They're volunteers anyway. But he oversees their work, tries to coordinate them, calls their meetings, submits documents to them, but they don't report to him. He reports to the general, or they report to the General Conference. That makes sense. Jen says, so Matt, what does our hierarchy actually look like? It seems somewhat confused. I know we're trying to separate temporal and spiritual, but it seems like we're overcomplicating things. And so Matt says, you're correct. It's overcomplicated. The General Conference is the highest organization. The bishops are amenable to the General Conference through an episcopacy committee. The Connectional Council is made up of some members of the commissions of the General Conference and some at-large members. And we're about to go over that here in a minute. Operates to the Connectional Council and is responsible for its functioning, but they can remove him or her. And that's right. Duncan says a non-disparagement clause is a preemptive mute of criticism of a person with inside knowledge. I'd rather teach graciousness and discernment. You know, I was wondering that when we went over it, and I think that is important. I think disparagement should be allowed from people who have worked for the GMC and have gotten a bad taste in their mouth, and that needs to be something that we contend with rather than legally constrain. I would have that removed. D says, I think I understand what the TLC is trying to do here, and it's mostly okay. The core problem with any plan we adopt is who we put in the positions. Not much on paper yet about qualifications required to serve in various positions, is there? Or did I miss something? Well, they did publish a job description for the Chief Connectional Officer. I'm going to make sure. No, I've been wrong. You've been right. Connectional Operations Officer. Man, am I an annoying person sometimes. Golly. The COO, Connectional Operations Officer. They did publish a job description for that position. It's just not in the Book of Doctrines and Discipline. J should include the CFO. What was J? In consultation with the Connectional Commission on Finance Administration, Pension and Benefits, and the Executive Director of Finance and Administration, prepare the general church budget for deliberation, amendment, and approval. So Matt is saying that should include the chief financial officer, who's Robert Worthington. Yeah, that seems kind of common sense. So I wonder why he's not specifically stipulated there. Duncan says, I'd rather an executive officer not be completely beholden to the assembly of bishops. I didn't see that they were completely beholden to they just have to report once a year. If anything, I mean, I don't want them to be completely beholden to them. I want them to report regularly to the bishops who have to lead and to the people who have to follow. I just think regular communication is required for healthy group dynamics, and I don't want someone operating behind the scenes who is not regularly getting feedback from the people that they're trying to lead. If we're only getting feedback once every 6 years for a week or two, that is not sufficient. It doesn't matter what we put in writing. You got to have regular feedback. Yeah, they definitely are beholden to the Connectional Council. Tom says, I'm on the Finance and Administration Committee. It's on our radar. We've been discussing with Richard Van Giesen and Robert Worthington. That's very wise. Keep doing that. All right, we need to look at paragraph 124, petition 124 now. You should see that on my screen now. We got 20 minutes to cover this. This is 5 pages, so I'm going to try and read fast. This is all new language. This is put forward by the TLC. This petition establishes a general church connectional council, defines its composition, and outlines its authority and responsibility. This is going to be the most powerful group in the GMC, replacing the TLC. Paragraph 702. This starts off the 700s. Connectional Council. The Connectional Council shall be the chief missional and administrative body of the GMC, providing leadership at the general church level in between general conferences. In addition to the express authority outlined herein, the council shall have full legislative authority with respect to all matters expressly delegated to it by the Book of Doctrines and Discipline or the general conference as stated in each such delegation. The council shall be amenable to the general conference. Its actions shall be reported to the general conference, and its actions must be ratified by the next general conference for those actions to continue to be valid following the adjournment of each general conference. So that makes it very clear they are not reporting to the COO, Chief Operations Officer, their Connectional Operations Officer. They are reporting only to the general conference once every 6 years. They're making some decisions in the in-between time, but those decisions have to be signed off on by the general conference session following. 2. The council shall consist of not more than 24 persons who shall serve until the adjournment of the next general conference or until their successors are elected as provided herein. Service on the council prior to 2026 general conference shall not count against any term limitation. Okay, so it's going to be established this year, well, next week, in the following weeks, and then those years aren't going to count. 2026 is a new game. Those persons who are elected to the council prior to 2026 general conference shall serve a 2-year term or until their successors are appointed or elected, beginning with the 2026 general conference. Except for bishops elected to the council, an individual may not serve on the council for more than a total of 12 years, but are elected to the council for a term not exceeding 6 years. Service on the council prior to 2026 general conference shall not count against this term limit. All members of the council serve with voice and vote. So some of that concerns term limits. I have a hard time caring about that. I know a lot of people really care about that. I'm of the mind that it's not as important as a lot of people think. But anyway, if you're curious, that's how that works. Point A. Each connectional commission identified, and if you don't know where those are, they're in paragraph 709 through 713, shall elect one clergy who is not a bishop and one laity to represent the commission on the council. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least. There might be more in the future. Each of those 5 get 2 reps, lay and clergy. Members shall be elected by each commission at the first commission meeting following general conference and shall serve until their successors are elected or their membership on the commission ceases, whichever comes first. In case of a vacancy, a commission shall elect a replacement member. So all the members of this committee are not coming from the same place, but at least 10 of them are coming from these connectional commissions. And so there's a new batch every time after the general conference ends. There will be vacancies from time to time, and then at that point, they will be filled by those connectional commissions. I believe. A commission shall elect a replacement member. It might say the respective or the concerned commission. I'm sure that'll be in. The Assembly of Bishops shall elect 2 bishops to serve as members of the council. So there will be bishops on the council, but only 2, and they're selected by the Assembly of Bishops. So we've already covered the dynamics, I think, of the commission on the episcopacy. They're the ones who nominate the candidates, and then once the candidates are elected out of that pool by the general conference, they're the ones who decide where those bishops are sent, which episcopal area, and then they review all of the bishops. Then there's the Assembly of Bishops, which is responsible for selecting all kinds of people. I think all of the conference superintendents are selected by the Assembly of Bishops, right? Or are they selected by individual bishops? All this is muddled together in my brain. Kudos to you if you're doing better than I am. But then the Assembly of Bishops also gets to be represented on the connectional council with 2 people that they appoint. Those elected prior to 2026 General Conference shall serve a 2-year term and shall serve until their successors are elected. Beginning in 2026, those elected shall serve a 6-year term or until their successors are elected. In case of a vacancy, the Assembly of Bishops, I miss an S there, shall elect a replacement. Pretty straightforward. So far you have 10 people from the general commissions. You have 2 people from the Assembly of Bishops. You can have up to 24 people on this commission. So point C, the general conference shall elect 4 clergy and 4 laity from persons nominated in accordance with the plan of organizations and covenant of our life together. If you haven't gone through that document, TJ and I went through it a few months ago in 4 episodes, so it might be worth going through that with us. Adopted by the 2024 Convening General Conference and beginning with the 2026 General Conference as specified in the Book of Doctrines and Discipline. Those elected prior to the 2026 General Conference shall serve a 2-year term or until their successors are elected. Beginning in 2026, those elected shall serve a 6-year term on the council or until their successors are elected at the next General Conference. In case of a vacancy, the council shall select a replacement. So, of course, we're not going to get the whole General Conference together to do new elections. Rather, the council can just select new people, which is interesting. So there are going to be another 4 clergy and 4 laity. So we had 10 that come out of the general commission, general whatever they are, connectional commissions, 2 bishops, and then 8 elected from the general conference. D. So wait, that's 10 plus 2 plus 8. That's 20. We can only have up to 24. D. The council shall nominate and elect 2 additional clergy and 2 additional laity to ensure geographic, racial, and ethnic age and gender diversity. Those elected prior to 2026 General Conference shall serve a 2-year term or until their successors are elected. Beginning in, it's the same language, except in the case of vacancy, a person in this category, the council shall elect a replacement. So here's just the affirmative action type thing. We might have a majority culture or demographic that's elected to all of these positions. In that event, if there's an underrepresented demographic in the GMC, then the connectional council is going to be able to put 4 people, 2 clergy, 2 lay, of those demographics on the connectional council so that there's representation, equitable representation on the highest level governing. And you can get bent out of shape about that, but really, if you want to maintain the legitimacy of the body, you have to have representation from all the major constituencies. You just have to. So, isn't that a compelling thing when somebody says you just have to? I guess you can disagree with me on that, but grievance culture is real, y'all. And if you have a significant constituency in the GMC that is not represented on the chief governing body, you can just welcome all kinds of conflict. So I think that's actually wise. E, excluding the bishops, at all times the number of clergy and laity shall remain equal on the council. I don't think that's saying that at every meeting you have to have an equal balance. It's just saying the membership at all times has to be equal. F, the council shall elect its own officers from among its members. However, a bishop may not serve as the chair or vice chair of the council. So there will be 2 bishops part of the connectional council. They can never be chair or vice chair. I think that's good, probably. G, the connectional operations officer shall serve as the staff person for the council with voice but without vote. So all of them, all 24 members have voice and vote. The COO has voice but not vote. So he is not considered a member of the council, he or she. Rather, they will preside. Oh, no. They'll serve as the staff person for them. They will report to them. And then the connectional operations officer shall preside at any organizing meeting of the council until a chair is elected. So they will have positions, and the general conference is not going to decide who those are. That we just decide who's on the council. And then when they get together, the COO will preside at that meeting until the roles are decided, and then he or she will step down. All general church executive directors shall participate in council meetings with voice, but without vote. So the executive directors, okay, so there's going to be the connectional commissions, and out of those, they will get a lay and a clergy to represent them on this body, but the executive directors apparently will not be them, because executive directors can participate in these meetings with voice, but they're not going to get a vote. That's interesting. I didn't get that from before. Other general church staff shall participate in meetings of the council at the invitation of the council with voice, but without vote, obviously. So, but it does say executive directors shall participate, so they don't have to be invited. They're just there all the time. Okay. 3, the council shall meet at least twice per year face-to-face, absent exigent circumstances that would require electronic or other forms of meeting, and electronically at other times for the purpose of communication and coordination of ministry among the commissions. I would think that more regular meeting is needed. I would have it be monthly. I wish they had established this. They have to meet at least twice in person. It'd be great if it said biannually. I think that means every 6 months. But then also electronically on a monthly basis. If you're going to maintain a steady hand on the wheel, you just need that. 4, the council shall have the following specific authority and responsibilities. Okay. A, to implement the vision of the GMC and steward its mission, ministries, and resources as determined by the actions of the General Conference and in collaboration with the Assembly of Bishops. Of course. B, to engage in proactive global strategizing, including developing a strategic plan for growth and evangelism, discipleship, and mission, and to implement the priorities established by the General Conference. That's great. There's obviously going to be a lot of overlap between them and their only staff person, the COO. Overlap is good. I think that's great for organization. As long as everybody's on the same team, it works out great. C, to adopt policies and procedures applicable to the general church, its commissions, and its other entities in alignment with the Book of Doctrines and Discipline and the priorities set by the General Conference. So, unless the delegates assert themselves on specific job descriptions and policies, the Connectional Council is going to draft all of those and adopt all of those. And so that's where the job descriptions for the people in place came from, is from the TLC. And that's how it's going to continue to work unless the delegates to the General Conference give very specific directions about the functions and job descriptions, which they would have to abide by. D, to establish the general church budget annually in accordance with the priorities and directions established by the General Conference, provided that each annual budget shall not exceed 90% of the average of the general church connectional funding received in the prior 2 years, except that the 2025 budget shall not exceed 90% of the total sum received in general church connectional funding in 2024. In establishing the general church budget, the Connectional Council shall be guided by the following financial values. So they're establishing an annual budget. Remember, the General Conference is only getting together every 6 years, so that means that annually a budget is being put together by these folks that hypothetically report to the General Conference, but they're not going to be able to report to the General Conference. So they're doing this on a yearly basis, and the formula they have to use is that they cannot require the spending of any more than 90% of the giving of the previous 2 years average giving. So it's not as though they add 2 years together and then spend 90% of that. It's they average out those 2 years and they can't spend more than 90% of what that is. That just guarantees there's never a budget shortfall unless something dramatic happens. So here's the principles or values that they're supposed to have when they do this. And these are good values. Accountability to ensure that the assets God has entrusted to us are responsibly managed. Now, here's the thing I'm going to say. Unless you assign specific benchmarks or reporting, this is all just cheap talk. So accountability is great. Accountability and transparency, the next one, those are 2 of my 3 core values. The third one is vulnerability. But you'll notice that no specifics are in place. So accountability and then transparency to create trust throughout the connection of the Global Methodist Church. So unless you stipulate bare minimum standards on these things, then I don't think it really matters. So like with accountability, it would be great if language was added saying that they're going to have a transparent accounting, what's it called? Whenever you audit, that they're going to publish an audit every year that's available to the general public, or that they're going to make the CFO amenable to the bishops and to the general church population. That's how accountability works. And then transparency is part of the same thing. Regularly reporting to the people with transparent, obvious financials. As Jeff Pospisil, the previous CFO, warned, there's a way of giving information that actually obscures and complicates. I wish there was language here requiring that they honor accountability and transparency by regular matter-of-fact reporting and being amenable to the general church body, the people, 3, local church-centric as the strategic base for optimizing the mission of the church. So they are not going to start puffing themselves up like the United Methodist Church general agencies did. Rather, everything needs to be oriented around the local church. Point 4, nimble and lean structure of connectional entities to ensure adaptability to the ministry needs of the conferences and local churches. So it's oriented towards local churches, and it's not going to start adding to its own growth the way that it did in the UMC. 5, limited and sustainable policies so as not to restrict but enable ministry to flourish. So limited and sustainable policies. I think that's a great policy to have. All of these are great principles or values, but what compels them to actually maintain them? E, to ensure the dissemination of information and communication among the annual conferences, connectional commissions, and assembly of bishops. I would have that expanded out to the entire denomination more broadly. If it's going to these centers, if it's going to annual conference staff, connectional commissions, and assembly of bishops, then they can simply have a policy not to share that with people, and that's not okay. I would have it just published. Man, if it was up to me, there would be monthly statements published on the Global Methodist website. There's no reason why that shouldn't happen. F, to coordinate the work of and to that effect, I actually have legislation, bare minimum standards on conference websites. I think that's what it's called, something like that, that mandates regular reporting on that level for annual conferences. I wish I'd known about this whenever I was drafting petitions, because I think I could have at least put it forward to have this. I hope, what's the committee responsible for this? Connectional organization. Connectional organization, people, when you're in committee, please consider something like that. I just think that's so key. If you have them restricting information and that becomes the cultural norm for us, man, that's just the worst. I don't want to be like that. I hope you don't either. F, to coordinate the work of the connectional commissions and the general church staff to ensure that the actions of the General Conference are implemented and the vision and mission of the Global Methodist Church is advanced. Yeah, that comes back to the obvious stuff. G, to evaluate the work of the connectional commissions and the ministries of the General Church in fulfilling the mission and vision of the Global Methodist Church as established by the General Conference. That fits. H, in collaboration with the conference superintendents to adopt and implement services to be performed by the General Church which will benefit the annual conferences and produce cost savings based on economies of scale. I'm a big fan of this. I think the General Church should be not just holding values towards the local church, but actually trying to produce like real services for the local church and annual conferences that reverses the flow, the directionality that we got used to in the UMC. I think H is great. I, to evaluate and authorize such changes in the pensions and benefits programs of the GMC upon recommendation from the CCFAPB. I wonder what we're going to call that eventually, but yeah, they have to be able to do this sort of stuff. J, to hire the connectional operations officer and evaluate his or her work annually. So we already reviewed that process in Petition 93. K, to approve and authorize all staff positions at the general church level. So even though the COO was giving hiring and firing abilities, the CC, this group, approves and authorizes all staff positions. So there is a dialogue there. L, to fill vacancies among the members of a connectional commission that occur between general conference upon nomination by the relevant connectional commission. So we covered that stipulation above. And then M, to coordinate proposals coming from the connectional commissions to the general conference to assure congruence with the church's mission and strategy, as well as congruence with each other. So one of the things that we saw in the United Methodist Church was each general board and agency kind of became a silo to itself. Their job is going to be responsible for making sure that doesn't happen. All right, last page of this petition. N, to initiate staff and set parameters for task forces dealing with issues beyond the scope of an individual connectional commission. So they are going to be able to make task forces like the TLC did. For people on this legislative committee, I would have you add language saying anytime a task force is formed, they have to inform the general church on the website. They have to put out a statement saying, we formed this task force. Here's who's on it. Here's what their goal is, so that they can be amenable to the people. That's super important. I know, like I, for one, whenever I found out there was an Episcopal task force meeting, and I had no idea they'd been put together, who was serving on it, I felt like that was somewhat of a betrayal of trust. I don't think it is the prerogative of the chief leadership body to just form bodies that we don't know about. I think we need to know about the work that they're doing and who's doing it. O, to recommend to the General Conference such changes and implementing legislation as may be appropriate to ensure the effectiveness of the GMC. So that's pretty broad. And then 5, the council shall be an incorporated legal entity. I think that was added recently. So in general, I think it's great. I think you got to have a chief governing body, but color me concerned about lack of specificity in transparency and accountability. I've already suggested the language that I think would be best, being quite explicit about regular reporting, transparent and easy to understand reporting, and being amenable to the people. Now, that's not to say that they all have to do interviews with me or anything, but they do need to regularly be putting out statements at least, but also there needs to be a channel for people to ask them questions and push back against decisions. And so I don't know exactly what that language would look like, but if that process is not in place, then we are going to start to feel like we are under some kind of like oligopoly, just under a few rulers, and then the chief operations officer essentially being an emperor. Hypothetically, this body is going to be able to fire a COO that acts out and doesn't honor the boundaries. But if we get the sense that they are not reporting to us, they're working together, they're forming secret task forces, they're doing stuff with money that we can't see, like if that impression is given, then it doesn't matter if they're perfectly honorable. The optics are so bad that this whole thing is going to crumble, because everybody's going to sense that it's just like the UMC. They're going to run for the doors. There's no trust clause, and you're not going to be able to keep people like this. So I think Petition 124 is good, but you need to make it much more robust. You need to make it, people on this legislative committee, listen to me. I'm dead serious. If you don't adopt stuff like this, then I think it's going to, you're essentially peeing in the swimming pool. People are going to get out. It's just setting the terms of dysfunction on down the line. Tom Finley says the new CFO, Robert Worthington, is extremely qualified. I agree. I think he's a fantastic person. If you haven't seen the interview I did with him before he was CFO, you really should. It's on Christian apologetics. Really just a fantastic person. We have a few more comments. It's already 8:34. I got breakfast upstairs, but I need to show some love to locals people. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to go over to locals. That's my 2-year-old yelling for me. I'm going to be late. I'll be there in a minute. So anyway, I'm going to have the URL for the Plain Spoken page on this thing that comes up here in a second, and you can go over there if you want to be a part of it. If not, I'll see you tomorrow morning.